papers for today. Julie, if you don't have, you could print what I sent you.
Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you for joining us here at the United National Congress's media press briefing, where the members of the opposition, under directive from our honorable political leader, come to provide the country with pertinent pieces of information related to the happenings and ongoings with respect to the government and administration within Trinidad and Tobago. This morning, I am in fact Sean Sobers, Attorney at Law and former Senator of the United National Congress. I am gracefully joined by esteemed counsel and Member of Parliament for Chaguanas West, Mr. Dinesh Rambali. And together we intend to provide you, as I indicated before, with certain pieces of information that we think is important to be on your minds as we go forward within this upcoming week. I would also like to take this opportunity as well to congratulate our political leader, Mrs. Kamla Persad-Bissessar, Senior Counsel, on her victory and the entire staff team on their victory at the internal elections that was held at this past Sunday. Albeit that we would have had some inclement weather, the voter turnout was quite a lot of persons, and it demonstrates to the country at large that democracy is well and alive within the United National Congress. As we begin this morning's press conference, I would now like to hand it over to MP Rambali, who will take over at this point in time with the press head.
Thank you, Mr. Sobers. Thank you to all who have tuned in. Good morning to everyone. On behalf of our political leader of the opposition, Honorable Mrs. Kamla Persad-Bissessar, Senior Counsel, we say welcome to each and every one of you to this, our Tuesday press conference. As Mr. Sobers has pointed out, there are pertinent matters which, the political leader and leader of opposition has instructed us that we continue to keep the work and the information flowing for the benefit of the citizenry. Of course, this morning we are fully aware, we all know that Trinidad and Tobago is bracing for the arrival of a tropical storm later this afternoon. We wish to emphasize at the outset the need to remain alert, vigilant, and to be ever prepared to be our brother's keeper. The Honorable Leader of the Opposition, Mrs. Kamla Persad-Bissessar, she has instructed all of her members of Parliament, councillors, other local government officials to begin working on the ground to assist where they can. And this is a process that I am very happy to say that, as of yesterday and early this morning, a lot of the corporations, they have been on the ground ensuring that sandbags are being distributed and that whatever steps can be taken to assist with persons in the community, that they are in fact taken. I want to urge everyone to stay calm and take all precautions. There is no reason to panic. All that is required is some simple preparation and adherence to safety procedures, and we will withstand this storm. Please pay attention to the weather bulletins and have all emergency contact numbers on hand in case you need them. Please remain indoors during the late afternoon today, into evening and night, and do not leave unless it's an emergency. Ensure you have, and I know most people know these things, but we are saying it as we are in the beginning of this press conference, ensure you have batteries in case there are, power outages, drinking water, food to last a couple days or two. Please do not engage in panic buying, whether in the groceries or whether in the gas station or otherwise. We are very likely to be facing extremely high winds, so please remove objects on your property that may, pose, some difficulties and potentially could become, weapons of destruction around your home. It could crash into your windows, it could crash into your vehicles, it can go into neighbors' property, etc. So all of these things I know that Trinidadians and Tobagonians are fully aware of, but we are saying it out of precaution, that you're reminded to take such necessary steps to engage, each other. I want to say that please secure your pets. And for those of you, my constituency, Chaguanas West, it is a flood-prone region. There are certain parts of the country that are flood-prone, even without the advent of storms, once you have some inclement weather. So if you live in flood-prone areas, please take all the necessary precautions. Reach out at the outset, in advance, reach out to your local government corporation, see where the nearest emergency shelter is. The corporations are assisting persons with sandbags. Please reach out to them. Sean, we have been hearing from different persons this morning, various members from the government. I know that you will be seeing other press conferences as well. I would urge you to pay attention as well, because it is worth knowing what is being stated. We expect the government, we expect them to be hands-on, easily accessible, as well as prepared to prioritize the resources where they are needed the most. I assure you that as members of the opposition, we are ready, willing, and able to work together in the interest of the welfare of the people. Ladies and gentlemen, I have spoken about the work of the opposition members earlier, the expectations of the government, the fact that despite calling upon government to account and that we are prepared to work with them in the paramount welfare of the people in mind, I call upon you most as citizens to exercise a sense of civic-minded duty. Be responsible for your own safety, put your welfare first, be responsible and look after yourselves. That being said, we remain, as I said, ready to work with the communities, members of the communities, in case they need any assistance. I want to now move on, Sean, and members of the community. I would like to speak about another tropical storm, Reginald Amo, and the devastation, however, that he is now causing as he continues to batter our constitution. And unlike the physical storm we are facing, tropical storm Amo can cause far more damage to our society, as it has been doing already, and well beyond the next few days. So this is the topic that I would like to move on to. And I want to assure the population that whilst we continue to work together with everyone to remain as safe as possible, our honorable leader of the opposition has mandated us, this is a directive, the work must go on. And this is an equally important matter which has been engaging the national community, and hence both Mr. Sobers and myself we will be speaking to different facets of what is considered to be the administration of justice. And that is something that all citizens are key stakeholders, beneficiaries of, and therefore we need to speak about this. Ladies and gentlemen, some of you may be wondering why this country went into an uproar when we discovered that the Attorney General was dishonest with the Miami court. I want you to understand that it was not simply a matter of embarrassing this great country of ours. No, it was a bigger issue than that. What the Attorney General did was something that broke the trust and confidence of the public in the administration of justice. Put another way, he has sowed the seeds of mistrust so that we will always wonder whether under his stewardship it is okay to be dishonest. Is it okay to bend the truth? Is it okay to string the country along with innuendos and to add insult to injury? Is it okay to decide if and when he will be accountable to us, the people of Trinidad and Tobago? And if it is okay to do all of these, can we trust that the justice machinery will be fair and uphold the trust that citizens have placed in it with their very lives? Ladies and gentlemen, the Attorney General is supposed to be such a person that his intellectual prowess and good character serve as a medal of honor for the legal fraternity. Both Mr. Sobers and I are attorneys at law. He is a representative of the government and the country in legal matters. He advises the government. His role, in other words, is not ordinary. Some of you may think that the role of the AG is far away from you, far removed from you, that it does not concern you because you may not have business with him. But this is not true. He heads a vast portfolio of agencies which you may be using in your everyday life. Allow me to show you the remit of the Office of the Attorney General. It oversees a number of departments, many of which all of us commonly use in our everyday lives. These include Registrar General Department, Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, Office of the Chief State Solicitors, Office of the Solicitor General, Law Revision Commission, Office of Chief Parliamentary Counsel, Anti-Terrorism Unit, Intellectual Property, and it goes on. So just as an example, many of us in our lifetime would use the Registrar General Department, whether it be to register births, deaths, marriages, adoption, what you name it. Many of our own records, including land titles and registrations, would be kept there. Many of us in our everyday lives will access the Office of the Chief State Solicitor to deal with the administration of estates after a person passes on. It deals with mental health applications before the courts. It is the official receiver in certain matters, a huge investigatory remit. This official receiver has a huge investigatory remit as well. It is the public trustee in many applications before the court. Law Revision Department is responsible for the administration of justice and work or for Parliament. This department compiles, publishes and maintains an updated edition of the laws of Trinidad and Tobago. The Anti-Terrorism Unit was established under the Office of the AG and the Ministry of Legal Affairs. The intellectual property under the AG's department oversees the functions associated with patents, industrial designs, copyrights, trademarks, etc. The list goes on. The Office of the DPP, something that each and every one of us have grown over our lives to know the importance of this independent arm of governance. That Office of the DPP is also under the remit of the Office of the Attorney General. And as you know, that department is responsible for the prosecution, for criminal prosecutions on behalf of the state. The simple point in all of this, ladies and gentlemen, is to show you that the Office of the Attorney General is one that is so central to the proper functioning of our society as a whole. It is integral to the administration of justice. It is a crucial pillar in a functioning democracy. That is the significance and importance of such an office, Office of the Attorney General. And therefore, that is the significance and importance of any individual who sits in this high office. So when you have such an individual, such as A.G. Armour, in this particular case, this is what we are saying, who can tell untruths, who is hell-bent on pulling wool over our eyes, you can appreciate the dangerous road he is taking the country down. He is the man at the helm, and he playing mind games with the population. He brazenly refuses to account to the common man, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, about what his intentions were in that original affidavit in the Miami proceedings. In that affidavit, he portrayed his minimalistic involvement in that infamous legal matter before the Miami court, which, mind you, is contrary to the facts publicly available for all to see. So this scenario reminds me of a quote by one Justice Mahon, and those who may not be very familiar with such a name, Justice Mahon, he was a former New Zealand High Court judge who led a commission of inquiry into the 1979 crash of the Air New Zealand Flight 901. And this is what he had to say, which I think it is very instructive. And I quote, "The palpably false sections of evidence which I heard could not have been the result of mistake or faulty recollection. They originated, I am compelled to say, in a predetermined plan of deception. They were very clearly part of an attempt to conceal a series of disastrous administrative blunders, and so, I continue with Justice Mahon, I am forced reluctantly to say that I had to listen to an orchestrated litany of lies. I close that quotation of Justice Mahon. Mind you, this is not the judge in the Miami court, but it could well have been his sentiments. Why, after all, did the Miami judge disqualify our AG from continuing in this matter? Why did he disallow a further clarification on the original affidavit of the Attorney General, Mr. Amo? Why did he not choose to expedite the Attorney General's appeal? We don't even know the grounds of that appeal, but we wait and see. Under all of what I have just said, ladies and gentlemen, there is still the cost to the taxpayer. The more games the Attorney General plays, the longer he keeps this matter protracted, the more our legal bills are going up. And we are talking millions at a time when we cannot even settle wage increases with workers. Money that could have gone to them is now propping up these legal dramas that are playing out on our world stage. Ladies and gentlemen, this is shame to Trinidad and Tobago. Shame of the lowest rank. I want to talk a little bit about the rule of law, because I know the population has been hearing us use certain terminology and some may not pretty much accept what it means and how it translates into affecting their lives. Ladies and gentlemen, this concept called the rule of law, this is a law like the law of gravity in a sense. We don't often think about gravity as we go about our daily lives, but it keeps us all grounded. It keeps us from flying in all different directions. It gives us a certain amount of order, and so we have come to depend deeply on gravity for our own stability. In a similar way, the rule of law governs our sense of stability as a society. It keeps us functioning optimally and brings a great sense of order to our daily lives. Let me borrow a really good definition from someone called Jeffrey Walker, who says, and I quote, "Most of the content of the rule of law can be summed up in 2 points. One, that the people, including, one should add, the government, should be ruled by the law and obey it. And two, that the law should be such that people will be able, and one should add willing, to be guided by it." This is Jeffrey Walker. The rule of law, that is his piece, the rule of law foundation of constitutional democracy. From that definition, you can see that people must be willing to be guided by this principle. They must be willing to subject themselves to the laws of a country in furtherance of justice, and must continue to believe that it is worth their while to do so. Now imagine a person is arrested, and this is something that I know Mr. Sobers will speak about in a different context. If the rule of law works well in the country, this person will be told why he's been arrested. It will be explained to him that he has the right against self-incrimination, the right to silence. He will be told that he is innocent until proven guilty, that if he cannot afford a lawyer, one will be provided for him or her. In other words, the rule of law encompasses reason for the arrest, presumption of innocence, searches done with appropriate warrants as necessary, right to silence, right to lawyer, right to an interpreter, right to bail, right to know the evidence against you, right to be heard, and right of appeal. So the rule of law, ladies and gentlemen, protects ordinary citizens like me and you from the arbitrary exercise of state power. It guarantees accountability. Even courts are accountable by way of systems of review and appeal. It maintains, rule of law maintains that no one is above the law, including government officials. It upholds the independence of the judiciary and the application of natural justice. The rule of law ensures that there is no deprivation of liberty without due process. It ensures transparency. So it now becomes clear that when the rule of law is respected, it engenders in a fair process. It engenders confidence in a fair process and confidence in the administration of justice. Only then will people subject themselves to the laws of the land. Let me give you an example. Because of a lack of confidence, many people refused a vaccine. People will only comply with what is on offer only if they have the confidence that the process will be fair to them. And this is where we have to examine whether the conduct of the Attorney General has inspired our confidence. Ladies and gentlemen, just a brief recap of the events of the A.G. Armour situation. The AG was found to be less than honest to a Miami court in a matter in which he previously defended Brian Quaitong and others, his clients. Today as AG, he's on the opposite side. He did not see a conflict of interest. In his affidavit, he makes reference to recusing himself from acting on behalf of Trinidad and Tobago by being walled off from certain components of the matter. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not a recusal. That is a conflict of interest. He misrepresented himself and said he was a junior lawyer. That he said he was confined to note-taking only and that he did not remember anything about the case whatsoever. So the judge disqualified him. That is what it boils down to in short. Now he wants to put a clarification to the court that he is remembering now that his involvement was actually more than he had expressed previously in his original affidavit. In other words, he wanted to clarify that the truth was different to what he put on oath in that affidavit, and that he may very well be liable under perjury laws in the US. Long and short, he lied. I have been very careful in previous press conferences and stuff with the language, but looking at his own admission by way of breaking his own self-inflicted vow of silence, self-imposed vow of silence, I can now say that long and short, he lied. He get catch and now trying to get an opportunity to clarify his real position to the court. But the judge will hear none of that. The AG keeps talking about how he suffers from having a bad memory. He wants us to believe that he forgets things easily, way too easily, because he doesn't know how else to explain away his misconduct. The AG recently called a press conference to talk about procurement. He must have felt empowered by the idea of playing mind games with the population, as he knew that the country wants accountability about his dishonest reputation, his representations. Instead, he kept his account of misconduct like bait that was off limits to an unsuspecting population. These mind games are simply unbecoming of any Attorney General. The Attorney General's, and I'm talking now A.G. Armour, his mention of his attempt to stave off another Section 34 is both deceptive, erroneous and misplaced, as he appears to be equating this country's justified calls for accountability to the passing of a Section 34 provision in the Parliament. But I'm not hearing A.G. Armour. I'm not hearing him deafening silence again. I'm not hearing him now after the recent Privy Council's ruling in which the law lord stated categorically that there was political interference in the judiciary of this country in the airport corruption case. You know, he was all around. He went and he gave statements. He most irrelevant to the discussion that was taking place in the Parliament last week. He entered the debate to talk about a case which the state had won in the Privy Council concerning regulations and what have you, and try to equate that as though that was an outright endorsement of how the country handled COVID, the government handled COVID during the pandemic. That just simply has to be uttered to know what rubbish it is. But now when we have a case which is talking about Piarco 1 and talking about serious issues of where an Attorney General belonging to the PNM regime would have been holding discussions with a sitting magistrate, chief magistrate, and going on and holding on to different pieces of here and there evidence and somehow inserting himself at different points in time in different scenarios with different key players in the administration of justice, including interfering with the office of the DPP. And now that the Privy Council has said that there is a clear case that the possibility of bias existed, the AG has nothing to say about that. So the law lord stated categorically that there was political interference in the judiciary of this country in the airport corruption case. So much so that the end result is that the preliminary inquiry has been ordered to start all over again. This is what happens, ladies and gentlemen, when you bungle a case and stymie the administration of justice. How much more of that can we truly take as a country, as a citizenry? The Privy Council's clarion call that there had been political interference in this case will now leave people feeling a loss of confidence in the administration of justice of Trinidad and Tobago. But ladies and gentlemen, this is not a sin of the past, you know. It is a sin of the here and now, one which continues to be robustly defended by the Attorney General Amor, who has yet to reconcile his accounts to the Miami court, to the population, and hopefully to himself. When he does that, he will see the only option left for him is to resign forthwith. Finally, I want to say that when someone as important as an Attorney General is leading the charge in legal matters in Trinidad and Tobago, and he is conducting himself with contradictions, defiance, and misrepresentations, then what he is doing is unraveling the rule of law, as I have just explained to you. We know the consequences of grappling with lawlessness in this country. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask you, can we afford a disintegration of the rule of law, something that is entrenched, a principle entrenched in our sovereign democratic principles and our constitution? Every decent nation depends on it for dear life. And I don't mean THEIR, DEAR, dear life. Can we throw that away? If not, and it better be not, we must demand that the AG resigns now. And assuming he fails to see the gravity of his misconduct and its implications for bringing Trinidad and Tobago into disrepute, then there is only one true and viable option left, and that is for the Prime Minister to dismiss him post-haste. So this is something that we continue to clamor for. Where is the Prime Minister? And I want to make this abundantly clear, that when it comes to matters of health with every citizen, and especially our leaders, we wish them Godspeed and the best of health and all the smooth procedures that is involved in checkups and whatever is required to ensure people's health. But that being put aside and not belittling it, where is the Prime Minister of this country today? We are hearing little tidbits from different ministers, but we are not hearing from the Prime Minister himself, and we are not getting the kind of accountability as to his whereabouts and his continued whereabouts outside of Trinidad and Tobago. We will speak to that a little bit more, I suppose, if questions are raised with that. The integrity of Trinidad and Tobago now lies with the Prime Minister. The lifeline to the rule of law now lies with the Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley. The stability of administration of justice lies with Prime Minister Rowley. As such, the only option available to him, Prime Minister Rowley, is in essence non-negotiable. He must fire Attorney General Amor now. The country deserves no less. At least the rest of the population does not think so. So I want to put it squarely that Prime Minister Rowley, we are bracing for a storm, but there was already a storm that was brewing, and it continues to develop winds and high speeds, and it is going to destroy the administration of justice. The confidence that people previously reposed in it, it is going straight out the door, out the window. And we would like to know, what is your position and what are you doing about it? You must act now, Prime Minister Rowley. So I want to thank you, and I would like to hand over back to Mr. Sean Sobers.
Thank you, MB Rambali, for taking us through the events as it pertains to Attorney General Amor and the several missteps that has taken place with his conduct thus far. My position here this morning is to speak about the press conference that was held last week Friday by the Minister of National Security, Fitzgerald Hinds, and was anchored by the Acting Commissioner of Police, MacDonald Jacob, where basically Minister Hinds would have put on the record a lot of fallacies in an attempt, in my humble opinion and estimation, to hoodwink the population and the media that was present into believing a series and a great many number of things that, as I would have indicated at the genesis of my contribution, that are totally false, inaccurate, and untrue. And today is extremely important as we are dealing with this event of this tropical storm that is possibly coming towards Trinidad and Tobago, and MP Rambley would have indicated the level of preparedness that we've been directed by the Honourable Opposition Leader as the alternative government in waiting to assist the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And it is really, really disheartening to know that in a situation like this, as MP Rambley would have touched on it, that we do not have clear leadership in the form of the Prime Minister not being present for whatever reason that has been advanced. But equally so, we are also aware that the Minister of National Security is also not in the country presently, or he's not present, and Minister Gonzalez is actually acting in his stead. And these are two very important office holders who should be present, especially when we are being faced with what could in fact be a possibly, and we hope to God that it isn't, a disastrous situation with respect to the inclement weather. We will continue doing what we have to do as the alternative government based upon our directives from the opposition leader, and we'll continue to pray that Trinidad and Tobago is kept safe within the next 24 to 48 hours. But as it pertains to that press conference held last week Friday, Minister Hinds really and truly came to indicate to the population that, listen, this bail amendment bill that is currently the law of the land is going to come to an end sometime in August, because there's a sunset clause that was attached to the bill. And he basically indicated that apart from, in his opinion, resourcing the police, of which I will treat with as well too, that the police service has indicated to him, the government is of the opinion as well too, that they require this bail amendment bill to continue, because it is an essential tool in the fight against crime and criminality, and the normal song and dance that we've grown accustomed to. I was commenting to MP Rambley earlier on. It was extremely painful to listen to that press conference, an hour and 36 minutes, and I know that many persons would speak about nails on a chalkboard, but I would take the nails on a chalkboard any day instead of listening to Minister Hinds. Now, the issue with bail in this country is a settled issue at this point in time, pursuant to Achille Charles. And the judgment in that matter, in Achille Charles and the Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago, where the Law Association of Trinidad and Tobago was an interested party, speaks to a central issue that was determined in that case, which was whether Section 5(1) of the Bail Act of 1994 was inconsistent with the Constitution and therefore should be struck down. Basically, in short order, in a unanimous decision by the panel of Court of Appeal judges consisting of the Chief Justice no less, it was held that that particular section of the Act was unconstitutional and was struck down. What it essentially meant was that it didn't really mean that all persons accused of murder were entitled to bail. It simply meant that all persons accused of murder would have been able or afforded the opportunity to apply for bail, and that still must be considered by a judicial officer. So essentially, to come to the country, to come to the population via press conference and indicate to the country that, listen, we need this bail amendment thing to continue, and that the opposition has already indicated that they're not going to support it, and the police need it, and if we don't get it, crime and criminality will continue to abound as it is occurring under their tenure, is totally irrelevant and untrue. The United National Congress, full of a battery of lawyers, headed by a senior counsel people who beating up people in the court left, right and center like MP Ramboli. We know the law. It is unconstitutional for us to, and what Minister Hines is actually inviting the United National Congress to do, is to join him in an illegality in the parliament. And we are not prepared to do that at all. The law of the land is Achille Charles. You cannot interfere with persons' rights to bail. It is enshrined in the Constitution. The Court of Appeal in a unanimous decision has said that. What are you trying to invite us to do? And I would have spoken at a press conference earlier this year when Achille Charles was pronounced. And I indicated then that somehow or the other, in some form or fashion, the PNM, subsequent to continuously failing in the fight against crime, they were going to find some way to blame the opposition. Some way to blame anyone else except themselves for their own misgivings and shortcomings. And last week Friday was the first pathetic attempt to do that by indicating that the opposition would not support this piece of legislation, when he, who is also a lawyer, regrettably, should know better that we cannot support something that is illegal. We cannot support something that has been pronounced by the Court of Appeal to be unconstitutional. And that is the short position with respect to this issue. So that we have received a directive, obviously, as I said before, we have so many lawyers within the party, we are headed by a senior counsel. We are not going to join the government in the parliament in breaking the law. And we call upon the government to do more, to figure out and present palatable solutions to arrest this crime situation. Because everyone has been affected. Our countrymen has been reduced to being victims of crime on a daily basis within this country. That the last 2 weekends that would have passed, we had over 10 murders taking place within that weekend. That Trinbagonians have been reduced to being shut-ins at home, in their own home, prisoners within their own home, just to protect themselves. And what I want to point out as well too, when we are having this discussion as it pertains to bail, is that the ethos of bail was never and should never be utilized as a form of punishment, which is what the PNM intended to utilize it for. It is simply to ensure that the accused person attends court for their hearing. Therefore, the remand of an individual in custody for even 1 day, and in this case what they are trying to advance for 120 days, is punishing that person for an offense that he or she has not yet been tried and convicted of. This is something that we cannot support. And we have said this time and time again. We have to appreciate that all accused persons who are brought before the court are just that, accused and not convicted. And in essence, there may very well be several persons who are in fact innocent before the court. Should it then be the adopted position by the opposition that even innocent persons should be punished based upon being remanded into custody, having refused bail, to languish in prison for even up to 120 days? That is not the position that we are going to support. Bail has been utilized in this way by the PNM because it was thought that by the refusal of bail, specifically in past incarnations for murder, and now with respect to this bail amendment, as it pertains to some serious offences under the particular section, that it will act as a sufficient deterrent for persons not to commit these crimes. If this was in fact a working position, then the murder and crime rate in Trinidad and Tobago would be quite low. But in contrast, however, the murder rate and the crime rate in this country continues to be exponentially high. So this theory does not work. Senator Lutchmedial would have sent out a release as well too, calling for the government, the Minister of National Security and the police to provide us with empirical data as well too, as it pertains to this bail amendment bill. What have been the successes? What has been the efficacy? What has been the operationalization of this bill? How has it assisted the police? And what came out of that press conference in relation to that call by Senator Lutchmedial was some type of excuse and blame game that was peddled, unfortunately, by the acting Commissioner of Police. He gave some statistics wherein he indicated that as it pertains to this bail amendment bill, about 150 persons roughly for the year would have been charged with respect to this bill. And he indicated that out of that 150, about 50 persons would have pled guilty because they believe if they plead guilty, they will collect a small fine as opposed to being locked inside for the 120 days and they would go out and reoffend. And he is saying that the fines that they are being given by the magistrates are inadequate and insufficient because he rationalized that the magistrates would fine them $8,000 or $9,000, and in reality a pistol costs $15,000 and an AR-15 costs $45,000, and these individuals could more than afford those things. So slapping them with a fine of $8,000 or $9,000 is insufficient. And so he essentially shifted the blame for crime onto the magistracy, that they are not doing their jobs by implementing these fines on these individuals or before the court. I want to tell the Acting Commissioner of Police something. Leave the magistracy alone. Leave the judiciary alone. They're doing their work. You have to start to do yours. The Minister of National Security have to start to do his own, and the government has to do their own. The magistrates have a job to do. They are creatures of statute. There's a balancing exercise that goes into laying down or pronouncing a judgment on an individual before the court. It isn't some willy-nilly decision that they make. They don't wake up on the side of the bed and decide to give a man 8,000 or 9,000. It is a balancing act. They have to consider the facts of the particular case in front of them. They have to consider the mitigation circumstances and factors that are presented before them. The law of the land is that if it is you plead guilty at the earliest possible occasion, you are entitled to a 1/3 discount on your plea, on the sentence that has to be administered onto you. They look at the public sentiments of the day as it pertains to sending a message to other persons so that they don't offend. These are the things that the magistrates consider. So that when you speak about the magistrates giving low fines, you are not actually considering what they have to do. They are doing their job. You aren't. So leave them alone. And now to comment on the fact that when they pay those fines, they go out and they reoffend. You are well okura with recidivism. That is what you would have been proffering to the population based upon your statements. If you have, and you are seized and possessed of the intelligence as it pertains to persons possibly reoffending and committing crimes subsequent to paying the fines, well, go and lock up the people. If you have the intelligence that is communicating that to you, that these persons are paying these fines and going out and reoffending, and you know them and you know who they are and you know what gang they're rolling with, go and lock them up. And I am certain that if they are charged with proper evidence and brought back before the court, the sentence or fine that they may in fact get, or the custodial sentence that they will get, will far supersede and surpass that which they may have gotten on the first occasion. That is how the judicial system works. As an acting commissioner of police, respectfully, sir, you're supposed to know that. Refusal of bail as well too is not a deterrent for persons to commit crime. Minister Hines in the press conference would have indicated certain things, that murders continue to be ordered and orchestrated behind prison walls by incarcerated persons who may have also been refused bail. As recently as last year, November, in and around November, December, this country was plagued with a number of murders, hits being called from behind prison walls on prison officers, members of the same Ministry of National Security that you have tenure over. It is a UNC administration, a UNC opposition that supported the government in bringing legislation to place jammers in the prison. A UNC opposition that supported the interception of communications within prisons. A UNC opposition that supported stiffer penalties for communication between incarcerated persons who held communications with the intent to do harm to persons on the outside. And it is based upon those statements that I ask you, Minister Hines, and I ask the government, what was the position with the jammers? There was a press conference that was held a couple weeks ago, anchored by other members of the Ministry of National Security. One of those persons involved in that press conference was the Commissioner of Prisons. And a member of the media posed a question to him. It is on record, it is out there, asking him because they were talking about hits from behind prison walls, just like Minister Hines would have indicated at this press conference on Friday. And a member of the media asked him, what is the position with the jammers? And the response from the Commissioner of Prisons was shocking. He indicated literally, he doesn't know anything about any prison jammers. He don't know anything about that. As far as he concerned, it does not exist. So what foolishness are you peddling to the population? The opposition has been calling for an account of those jammers, and you have not said a thing about those things. And now the Prisons Commissioner is telling the population that they don't exist. Who are we to believe? Your track record is abysmal. So clearly we will have to listen to the persons who are locked within the system, which is the Prisons Commissioner. These hits that come from the prison walls, these communications that cannot be intercepted or are not intercepted, are not jammed, is a direct indictment on your failure to protect these persons on the outside from these heinous individuals who are supposed to be locked up and not supposed to have cell phones and access to cell phones and be able to make communications for these hits to take place. Where's the response on those things? In that press release that Senator Lutchmedial issued as well too, in response to this press conference, she also spoke about detection. Because it does not matter what sanction or consequence that is implemented. If criminals do not believe that they will be caught, I continue to indicate that they will be emboldened to commit crime. If our detection rates remain abysmally low, we will continue to have these emboldened criminals who will commit atrocious acts because they lack the perception that they will be caught to face even the stiffest of consequences. More time should be spent by the administration on further resourcing the police officers to improve our detection rates. That is the discussion that should be had. The UNC administration also supported this administration on electronic monitoring. What is the status of electronic monitoring? Electronic monitoring could be an essential tool in the belts and the arsenal of the police as it pertains to monitoring persons when they get bail, so that they know where these persons are, that these persons should be confined to a particular area, and if they see them outside, they could go and arrest them and detain them. What is the position with electronic monitoring? We've also, as a responsible opposition, indicated to the population and to the government that the law allows for persons to make objections to bail. Yes, you have a right to apply for bail. You don't have a right to get it. And so the prosecution, which in some instances, in most instances in magistrates court are the police prosecutors, they have the ability to object to bail. And we have been calling on the administration to resource them with the necessary literature, the training to make sensible and reasonable objections to bail. Since we've called and we've indicated that to the administration, what is the statistics with respect to those objections to bail, both in the magistrates court and in the judging chambers in High Court and in the Court of Appeal? How many objections have there been to bail? Where is the statistics and numbers on that? So do not come at any press conference to blame the UNC. The UNC cannot be blamed for the decision of the appellate court, which have laid the law of the land in Achilles' Charles. The appellate court, not the UNC, struck down the legislation. The appellate court, not the UNC, found that the section of the act was unconstitutional. The appellate court, not the UNC, came to a unanimous decision in this matter, meaning that there were no dissenting opinions by the judges who took part in dealing with the case. The president of the panel of the judges that dealt with the case was none other than the Chief Justice himself, which shows the import of that case at hand. And Minister Hines spent a considerable amount of time at that press conference indicating that the UNC don't support the UN. I have stood on the platform in the parliament, on the pavement, at this press conference, at other press conferences, and indicated the number of legislations or pieces of legislation that the UNC has supported. That our political leader makes it abundantly clear, when the words of Faris P. lucidly clear, which is actually clear, right? That the UNC will support good legislation. The UNC will take time, numerous hours, with lawyers like MP Rambali, K.L. Taklal Singh, and all other lawyers, Anand Ramlugan, and the whole batch of lawyers that we have in the UNC, to fix bad legislation so that it could redound to the benefit of the citizenry. What the UNC will not support is draconian and unconstitutional and offensive legislation.
We are a supportive party because we're concerned about the people of this country. And you know, the unfortunate thing is, MP Rambali was speaking about Reginald Amo and issues related to this Miami case. And it is apparent that plaguing the PNM is some degree of amnesia. It is running like wildfire within the PNM. Because if they can't recall, I will tell them, it is your leader, Prime Minister Pete Rowley, then opposition leader, who stood up in a press conference, maybe in this very same office, and indicated categorically that the opposition would not support anything that the government was doing. No form of legislation would isolate them. He said that. Kamla Prasad Bisesa never said that. And our actions demonstrate what we do. So all of this foolish talk by Hines and Jacob, unfortunately, wasting people's time at that press conference, makes absolutely no sense. And to be fair to Acting Commissioner Police McDonald Jacob, he spoke about recidivism and reoffending. I want to make a plea to this government and the Minister of National Security. What is in place for persons who are released from prison to prevent them from reoffending? What is in place within the prisons as it pertains to reform? Where are the jobs for ex-convicts when they are released from prison? Where are the assistance to more support groups like Vision and a Mission and other support groups that are out there to assist ex-convicts? Right? In San Fernando, I get calls, particularly from one individual who is in fact an ex-convict, but has served his time and is doing stellar things within San Fernando and the communities at large to assist people within his community, and yet he cannot find a job. Where is the support for that person? Former Attorney General Faris Alawi said, don't worry, we have something in place for recidivism, the parole system. Where is the parole system? Where is the legislation for the parole system? It is non-existent. It continues to be failed talk. And all of these things are direct indictment on the government with their lack of fortitude and political will to fix the crime situation within this country. And as I am quickly moving away from Acting Commissioner of Police Jacob, let me tell you something, sir, with the greatest of respect to you. You are the Acting Commissioner of Police. You don that uniform, which is supposed to be tethered to an independent office, free from political interference and direction. It is disgusting to hear being uttered from your lips in response to a question by a member of the media, as it pertains to a question posed with respect to the United National Congress, that some suggestion is retarded. People don't use that word, sir. It offends a lot of persons who have children and individuals related to them who are in fact afflicted in a particular way. You do not use that word as an adjective, sir. Do not reduce yourself. You hold a particular office, and a lot of us have respect for you. We have no quarrel with you. We have no quarrel with you, so do not descend into the politics and use terminology like that. It does not augur well for your position and your office. And at that press conference, Minister Hines also spoke about resources that he gave the police. 80 vehicles, but in fact, Commissioner of Police Jacob would have indicated there's really only 67 that they are utilizing and working. Hines spoke about 1,000 plus body cameras, but in fact, nobody using body cameras because they have IT problems. Acting Commissioner of Police Jacob spoke about that. What about the DNA and Forensic Center? What about the station diaries and printers that people are clamoring for in the police station? These are the resources that they call for. What about the CCTV cameras? These are the resources that we need in the fight against crime. None of these things have been spoken about. This is what people want to hear at a press conference. And none of those things were touched on. And in closing, in your press conference, you indicated that it was your job to treat with safety and security, regardless as to what the fools would say. Well, sir, as I said before, it appears that amnesia is rampant within the PNM. Because the only fool who said that he was not responsible for the safety and security of citizens was you, sir, in an interview with Fazir Mohammed on TV6 this morning edition. So I don't know if the PNM is lacking a dose of Sanatogen or ginkgo or something to treat with loss of memory that is actually running rampant and spreading like wildfire within the People's National Movement. But there's a lot that needs to be done. Trinidad and Tobago, apart from this impending weather system, continues to be under stress and peril. And if the government is not prepared to arrest this crime situation within this country, then the United National Congress is more than willing and ready and poised to do so. And once called upon, pursuant to our mandate as it pertains to an election, we will in fact return good order and governance to Trinidad and Tobago. I thank you very much. I don't know if there are any questions for
We have a few questions, so I probably Anurag Nas from the Express has a few questions directed at you.
Yes, Express, okay. Yeah, you have it there. They will call in or you will read it out?
She sent it to you via
Yeah.
WhatsApp.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so these are questions. What are your thoughts on the Privy Council judgment regarding the collapse of Piarco case number 1? Well, I have been somewhat careful in speaking this morning, Sean, and not trying to get too in-depth in it, but I did walk with my copy of the judgment. So it is crisp off the Privy Council website, which was delivered yesterday morning. What I will say is I will try to be very careful with how I answer this question. It is there for everybody to read. The judgment is about 25 pages long, and everybody's encouraged to look at it. It really speaks to the separation of powers and independence of the judiciary. This is exactly what I was saying earlier in the press conference by trying to point out that the rule of law mandates transparency, honesty, and a lack of political interference. We must not have that in our judiciary and our administration of justice. Eventually, you will have to deal with this development by asking yourself, the citizenry, by asking yourself, how can you mend the broken confidence that the public will now have in an independent court like the Privy Council that has detected and pronounced on political interference? And that is what this judgment does. It is really a pronouncement on political interference and the consequences that it can have in judicial office. We need to be mindful of the consequences before they happen. They need to be avoided. And I say this, avoided by robustly upholding the rule of law. Again, we come to that principle as I have spoken to. So that is what I would say for now in relation to what are my initial thoughts on the judgment. Mr. Galbaran Singh has called for a commission of inquiry, and the question is, do you think that it is needed? Now, we know the significance of commissions of inquiry. We know the implications that go with it into any matter, having regard to the discussions that we have held in successive press conferences right here from the office of the opposition, leader of the opposition. And really and truly, there are a lot of considerations that have to be taken into account. That incident with the Pariot divers continues to score headlines, and it is because of continuing concerns that people have, that here it is, you can have a factual scenario, a very morbid scenario of where divers were trapped in a pipeline and they were virtually left abandoned to die, and when you're calling for a commission of inquiry, look where we are now. So I leave it there just to bring back into people's minds at the forefront exactly what considerations that go through people's mind in calling for a commission of inquiry. The call for a commission of inquiry, as to whether I agree with it in this particular case, Mr. Galbaran Singh himself calling for it, I think it comes as a balancing act between the need for transparency and accountability on the one hand, and an evaluation of the financial cost to the state on the other. So that would be my initial thoughts on it, as to whether we agree, disagree. I don't want to answer it in that way, because that is not something that I have the benefit of a party caucus and what is our position. But what I would say is that that call for a commission of inquiry, it has to be a balancing act. On the one hand, yes, there is a need for transparency and accountability, but there's a counterbalancing factor, and an extremely important one, as to the evaluation of the financial cost to the state. So that is in respect to the second question. Should the state, this is the third question, should the state drop all the PIACO matters in light of the judgment? I want to say that really, Sean, is a question in my mind to be directed to the powers that be. So I would think that the Director of Public Prosecutions should be the one, who is under the remit of the Office of the AG, as I spoke about again in our press conference today. The DPP will have to make that call. Again, many things will have to be taken into account, including the financial cost to the state, the delivery of justice, the confidence in those office holders to make the right call. And this, again, if you don't have that confidence in the Attorney General, if when that decision is made, you're going to have some problems with the ultimate decision, whether you say yes or no to the continuation of the case. As it stands, with all the information that is coming out in the public domain about political interference and the now infamous spat, right, between a former Attorney General, John Jeremy, and a former DPP, I believe it is Jeffrey Henderson, then the question of confidence in their decision is now crucial. So that is what I would say in response to should the state drop all PIACO matters. Do you think an account of all legal fees from the start of these proceedings, both locally and internationally, should be provided to the public? Absolutely yes. In fact, one would recall that the leader of the opposition herself made that clarion call in the recent budget mid-year review. MP Saddam Hussein, member for Barataria Sawa, made that call, and the Attorney General and the Minister of Finance, they were extremely evasive when it came to questions involving the payment of fees in regards to, as it relates to, to legal matters and the retaining of counsel and all of these things. So my answer to whether or not there should be account of all legal fees, absolutely yes. All of Trinidad and Tobago deserves accountability. It is their tax-paying dollars that fund these proceedings. It might actually be astounding to note the figure, these issues and the proceedings to date, and the likely cost of it in moving forward. It is something that we would want to know, and I'm sure it would be very interesting to see how the public reacts to an account of how the tax monies went when they cannot even get a pay rise. I mean, we're talking about people wanting pay going back for well over 8 years in some instances, and some instances more than a decade. They're waiting for their increases that are due to them. So I think that I hope that deals with those questions. Do we have any others?
Yeah. Senator Sobers, we've seen recently where it's become normal now for the Ministry of National Security to join the Commissioner of Police and do joint press conferences. At these press conferences, a lot of political rhetoric has gotten bandied about. Do you think that the Office of Police Commissioner has become very or too politicized?
Well, I think you are correct in saying that in a lot of the press conferences with the Minister of National Security, we see certain arms of the Ministry of National Security being present. Essentially, it is not objectionable for members of the Ministry of National Security to be present. They have to give their own update. But generally, in the past, what would happen is that the police service would have their own press conference where they would indicate their own positions. What should not be happening is Minister Hines should not use, or any other minister as a matter of fact, should not use a joint press conference like that to peddle political rhetoric, which is what he has been doing for the past several press conferences. And what would have happened on last week Friday is unfortunate, where we would have seen a very unfortunate statement or answer, in fact, to a question by the police commissioner, causing him to be tethered to the political fray. As I would have mentioned, his office is one that is independent. It should be perceived, or it should be, in fact, free from political interference. And when you have a situation where, unfortunately, he's dragged into the political fray due to the rhetoric that is being, or the vitriol actually that is being spewed by the individual to his right or to his left, wherever Hines chooses to squat, it is very unfortunate. And hence the reason why at this morning's press conference I would have implored respectfully to the acting commissioner of police is not to get himself involved in those issues. If at all he has to be present, he's present, he's there, he indicates his position, he can do it at his own press conference on Edward Street at the administration building. But keep away from the political rhetoric and leave Minister Hines to spew his own vitriol. I am of the belief that Acting Commissioner of Police McDonald Jacob is much better than Hines in that regard.
MP Rambley, you mentioned that we haven't heard from the Prime Minister. About an hour or so ago, Minister Al-Rawi held a press conference about the storm, and he said that the Prime Minister has messaged him to say don't panic. What are your thoughts on that?
Text message, WhatsApp, or whatever.
So, wait. So, if I'm understanding this correct, is it that the Prime Minister messaged Faris Al-Rawi to tell Faris Al-Rawi he must not panic, or is it that he messaged the country? That's a rhetorical question. I can't imagine that in a time like this,
Really
that the only message that we will hear from a sitting Prime Minister is don't panic. I think that was directed at Faris Al-Rawi, that he must not panic. But there is concern. Again, I repeat that, nobody wishes any untoward condition on the Prime Minister. So if there is validity in him seeking, ongoing medical procedures or treatment or just health assessments, so be it. Our position, though, is that there must be transparency even when it comes to matters of those. Nobody wants to know, per se, what is the nitty-gritty of the Prime Minister's health condition. But it must be that we know exactly why he is still out there abroad, and why, we have a man who is, not up to Prime Minister's stature, acting as the Prime Minister, and continues to leave the country in this state of abeyance. We have spoken about this whole matter with the Attorney General, and that is a serious matter. We have not heard, from the Prime Minister as yet. On this natural disaster that we are expecting now, and I hope and pray, and so do all of us, we hope and pray that there is a full mitigation of the disastrous effects of this tropical storm. In the years gone by, we have appreciated that these things tend to take a trajectory and miss us altogether. If that we are not so lucky on this occasion, and our president had answered in this way, the question is that we are going to take a real battering as a country. And where is the Prime Minister? Where is his leadership at this point in time? And I would really want to denounce that your only message would be don't panic. I think you need to lead by example. Your message must be one of encouragement. Your message must be one that will encourage citizens to be their brother's keeper. Their message would be one of, listen, everybody's on high alert, and they are most willing, ready, and able to assist should the unfortunate circumstances start unfolding. For our part, we have already had messages. If I go through my phone now and I start to read it, we may probably take about 2.5 hours to read the messages. So we have already had, since yesterday coming into this morning, numerous messages coming from none other than Mrs. Kamla Persad-Bissessar, coming by way of WhatsApp and coming through by way of emails, telling us to alert our constituents that they need to seek recourse through the relevant corporations. We have also heard from her that, guide constituents to let the staff know and have at hand listings that once people call or they reach out, that you can give them the numbers for relevant ministries. We have also gotten guidance, and I say guidance, some of us may know, some just need a gentle reminder, but this is the kind of leadership that you want. And this is where she would have guided us to say, well, okay, remember that they must understand that the ODPM is the institution, the entity, I should say, that will be working hand in hand with local government authorities, and that is the first line of assistance, and also that persons, be guided by security forces at a time like this as well. So these are the kind of things that we continue, and I don't want to use the word bombarded, it's not that. But these are the things that come through constantly on our phones, that it must now filter down to the ordinary man on the street.
Yeah.
And that is the kind of leadership that you want. You don't want people parading up and down, that's not what we are saying. But you want a leadership that people know that your leader is present and is in the trenches with you.
Yes.
And we are not getting that feeling. And I'm sure I speak on behalf of the majority of the population when I say this. So that is what I will have to say to that. I think the don't panic, the short answer is really for Minister Al-Rawi. The other part of it is we are concerned about his absence, and we continue to be.
The opposition has routinely raised concerns about the proper resourcing and funding of local corporations. Can both of you say whether or not you believe that your local corporations are adequately prepared to deal with the storm?
Well, maybe before I ask Sean to say a few comments on it as well, I can speak from a level of MP, right, member of parliament, and having constituency issues. This morning, one person called. He lives in the vicinity of New Street in Caroni Village. All right. He basically told me, Mr. Ganesh. I mean, I hope he doesn't mind I'm calling his name. He told me that the last time that we had some pretty heavy weather, and that the Caroni River bank was really being, it was deteriorating in a manner which it could have caused large-scale flooding. Back then, we were able to take necessary steps, and we were able to curb such an incident from occurring. What is happening now is that that same part or vicinity of that river bank is now deteriorating yet again. This is where we continue to say that if the resources are prioritized, on the one hand, when I'm using that situation, that river would fall under Ministry of Works. But in terms of the bank and the necessary drainage that lead out to that area, that would fall under the corporations. And this is why we say that you don't wait till the rainy season to start addressing problems which are obvious and in dire need of attention. You would do it during the dry season. And what we have not been seeing in this last dry season is the devotion of any substantial amount of resources to be able to aid at a time like this. So that was what all of our clamorings were about, that we wanted to see the resources being spread throughout the country, not only in opposition seats, but being spread throughout the country in those areas where we knew that once the rainy season came upon us, we would encounter problems, and a situation like this where we are likely to be hit by a storm. So this will be an example. Yes, it is unprecedented rainfall. Maybe you're going to get the high winds and all of these things. But what mitigates the damage in situations like these is when you know that you have already taken all the preparatory steps and you have spent the resources where it matters most to ensure that people's lives and livelihood are not affected, that they cannot pick up back afterwards. So this is what we have been clamoring about, and we continue to hold those concerns. I don't want to say that we expect that this will teach us a lesson, and that is not what our intention is. We are saying that we hope that we are mitigated in terms of the full effects of a storm, so that people don't have to be tested in such a manner. But this will be a test piece, so to speak, where our clamorings would now be in vain if it comes to pass that you didn't, and we know they haven't taken the necessary precautionary steps, and it would mean that people are going to be affected badly. Sean, I will let you add some words on this.
I know that in San Fernando, the councillors in San Fernando for some time have been clamoring as well for more resources to assist them in terms of preparation for, albeit that this is an unprecedented one, but generally for situations that may in fact affect residents within San Fernando in the rainy season. So in particular in San Fernando, there's the issue of the Sipera River. And I know recently during the dry season, Councillor Rishi Balaram Singh, also with assistance from the alderman, Buddy Samaru, Councillor Gedari, Kern, even Senator Luchmedia, they would have been clamoring to get assistance for that particular Sipera River to be dredged properly, and for whatever sludge and debris that really causes the river to back up and overflow its banks, for all of those things to be jettisoned from the river in and of itself. I don't know how much success they would have had, but they have in fact been on the ground since the beginning of the dry season trying to get those things in place. But it really tethers to exactly what MP Ramley has been saying, that we do in fact, in the opposition-controlled corporations, we lack the necessary funding and resources coming from central government to do more of what we need to do during the dry season. And we also lack the assistance in some instances from the Ministry of Works to get certain integral infrastructural operations conducted. It is unfortunate that we are at this 99th hour, and this is going to be a test, and unfortunately maybe a testament to lack of preparation and assistance and resources from those relevant authorities. But as MP Ramley would have indicated, our political leader has been given directions to the party ever since she was made aware of this situation. I mean, I think as early as on Sunday during the internal elections, because we were made aware that this tropical storm was going to be coming. Apart from treating with internal elections issues, the political leader would have been sending out information, meeting with persons, speaking with persons to try to get all corporations, all councillors, all limbs of the party ready and prepared to assist people if in fact something disastrous does in fact occur.
I just want to take the opportunity, Sean, to point out that, look, as we are answering this question, I get a message here. This is Loop News, today's date, of course, and it seems to be published in the last few minutes. What it says here, that the Price Club Supermarket, and I also see another name being called here, Annan Low Price Hardware. There's a south one and one is a central, and they are giving away free sandbags. So they are advising people that they can come and collect their free sandbags. So whilst I want to commend them, that is admirable, again it points to, is it that, this is the situation or the position we must reach, where people have to be fighting and driving around to get sandbags? These things should have been adequately resourced and available as of yesterday for people. And maybe they would to some extent, but again, the prioritization of resources is something which must not be compromised when it comes to preparing our people during the rainy season. And in this case, whether it is a tropical cyclone or tropical depression, whatever is the appropriate terminology, it's a storm that is going to hit us.
Okay, I think we have no more questions. So,
on behalf of the Leader of the Opposition, Mrs. Kamala Persad-Bissessar, Senior Counsel, on behalf of my colleague, Mr. Sean Sobers, Attorney at Law, on behalf of all my parliamentary colleagues and councillors, the various arms of the opposition party, I would like to wish our citizens the best of luck in their preparations at this time, and I trust that they are successful in preparing and completing their preparations well before the late evening time, so that in this situation where we expect the storm to hit us, that everybody will be able to weather the storm and that they will be fully prepared. I repeat, the sentiments expressed and sent down to us from Mrs. Persad-Bissessar, that we will be available, we will be accessible, and we are prepared to stand tall with the people and to assist in every possible way. So without further ado, I hand over back to you, the citizens, and we hope that in the meantime that this press conference has somehow enlightened you as to how your rights are being trampled by a government which is an unnecessary storm by itself. So thank you very much.